Hello, and welcome to Why Am I Like This? The podcast for those who didn't get enough hugs as a child. I'm Laura Wood, and I'm a trauma therapist.
And I'm Michaela Beaver. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
So, Michaela, why are we doing this podcast?
I'm so glad you asked. We want to help you understand yourself a bit better, how the things you learned about yourself and the world in childhood are still affecting you today. We want to figure out, why are we like this? Those random things about ourselves that we might wonder about, like, why am I so jumpy? Why am I so anxious? Why do I take everything personally? Why are my thoughts so negative? Why do I feel like I have to fix everything all the time?
Yes, and we are talking about sleep today. So we're going to try to answer the following questions. Why can't I fall asleep? Why can't I stay asleep? And how do I fix my sleep issues? So, Michaela, what is going on with our sleep?
Such a good question. I think that sleep is probably one of the number one things that people report to me as something that they want to fix, something that they think is a major struggle for them. And who wants to lay in bed and toss and turn when everybody else is asleep? The house is quiet. How annoying is it that you just can't shut your brain off? You think to yourself, I'm going to feel terrible tomorrow. It's going to be the worst. I don't know about you, but I've had nights where I can't sleep very well, and it's really frustrating.
Well, yeah. And then you're like, if I fall asleep right now, I can get 6 hours. If I fall asleep right now, I can get 5 hours. If I fall asleep right now, and then I always think about like, tomorrow's going to be so hard. Like I already am like thinking about how bad I'm going to feel the next day when I can't sleep at night. Like a lot of the time for me, I'll be laying there and I'll fall asleep quick, but then I'll wake up like in a couple of hours. And then I'll like look around. I'll not know what's going on. I'll check the time. Like, is it morning? It's not morning. And then I'm like, I have to go back to sleep. And then I'm like, why am I awake right now? And then I kind of go back to sleep and then I wake up again. A lot of times I wake up in pain and I'm like, why am I like my hips hurt or my legs are asleep, like weird, or my arms are asleep or something like that. And so I'm not comfortable. So I have to readjust and then I can't get comfortable. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, it's so hard. I know for me, most nights I sleep great. I know guys are going to hate me for saying that, but most nights I sleep wonderful. The problem is I have a thing that I'm worried about. I'm behind on something. I forgot to do something. And then all of a sudden, that thing is waking me up in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I literally can't even take care of it right now. Why do I care? And then, you do the things that you do that you know how to help you go back to sleep. And then you're up again thinking about the thing and you're like, just stop thinking about it. I don't want to think about this anymore. Like I put it, like I wrote a note, I said something by my bed. I wrote it out. I'm like, it's right there. I don't need to think about this right now. I can't fix it. But your brain just doesn't want to stop trying to think about the thing. And it can be really frustrating.
That is frustrating when you can't solve it right now. Like often for something like that, I'll use a container strategy, like a mental container strategy where I'm like, okay, let me put this in its box in my brain and I'll set it aside and I'll remember it later. I wrote it down, like writing it down is a great strategy. But you just can't fall asleep. I think that your brain is like, if I solve this, then I can rest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it needs you to solve it so that you can relax, but you can't relax until you solve it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so backing up a little bit here. So there's multiple types of sleep issues, right? So we have trouble falling asleep. We have trouble staying asleep. And then we have early morning awakening issues that like you wake up and then like it's 5 and you have to wake up in an hour and then you just can't, like your brain just won't let you go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And some people can have a combination of these issues, or it's really just more one thing that is causing that problem. So we talked about like worrying about stuff that we have to do or that we forgot to do. What are some other reasons why we might have troubles like with sleep?
trouble falling asleep, sometimes it's about like caffeine, like you're jittery or you're like pumped up. Maybe you just got home from something exciting and you're like amped up a little bit. You have adrenaline from something going on at home. Sometimes like thinking about, obviously like ruminating and thinking about stuff can be about things that are happening like in your house right then. Like, did I forget to turn off the stove? Did I forget to lock the door? Did I forget, that kind of stuff? Like, so it's not always future worries that are getting you. Sometimes it's like just nighttime routine stuff. Like, did I do all the things that I'm supposed to do? And then you have to get back up out of bed to go check. Sometimes your body just can't settle down. Like people who are fidgety and move a lot and just they need more time to slow down and relax their nervous system to start settling into sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned caffeine because that's definitely a huge issue because like we all of a sudden get into this cycle where we're like, oh, I didn't sleep well, so I'm going to use caffeine to help me stay awake. And then the caffeine now is the reason why we can't fall asleep. And so then we keep using more caffeine trying to fix it. And then our sleep just continues to get worse. So that can be a huge problem. I was also thinking when you're talking like a fight with our spouse, like maybe we had an argument or a disagreement with a family member before bed, and that's, waking us up. Sometimes working out and doing too aggressive of a workout, like we think exercise is going to make us feel better, but sometimes doing that like workout too close to bedtime can also disrupt our sleep. And then I like that you mentioned like fidgetiness, like, ADHD, clients with ADHD do have a lot of delayed onset sleep issues. Like they just can't stop until they just kind of like crash until they get to this. And it's like their brain is just going, their body's going, and they can't settle into sleep, which is not all people with ADHD. Some people with ADHD can't, especially if they don't have hyperactivity, they might not have problems shutting off their brain because, we have a lot of those, issues getting things that are going on in the brain to get through. And so we're not really thinking about a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
And so those people can tend to have a lot easier of time falling asleep.
Yeah. And then when they fall asleep, they have a hard time staying asleep at times, like waking up throughout the night. Like I was mentioning with me, I wake up 1,000 times and for a billion reasons. And sometimes I can fall asleep quickly after I wake up, but other times I can't. And so when I am waking up, I might not even have a real reason. Like maybe there's nothing going on in my head. Maybe I'm just waking up because I heard a sound and now I can't fall back asleep or something like
Yeah.
that.
Would you say that you're a light sleeper or are you pretty deep?
I'm not a light sleeper. Like people can talk to me and I've actually been known to have full conversations in my sleep and I'm not awake for them. And so my kids, it used to be a rule that like if they're talking to me and they know that I'm asleep, like whatever I say doesn't count. Because they would be like, you said we could go do this, or you said we could have this, or you said this. I'm like, no, that's not fair. You're taking advantage of the situation. Like they would always try to talk to me when I was sleeping or if I'm like laying down. So I always used to say, like, if I'm laying down when I give you the answer, like the answer is no. You can't, like you can't count on that information because I will respond, but I'll stay asleep.
That's so funny.
So I don't know what that is. Like I think sometimes there's like I think my brain is always like only partially asleep, but I'm not getting that deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's what's happening for me.
That can be hard. Do you find that that's more like during like a nap in the afternoon, or is that like at nighttime?
Well, definitely during a nap. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I fall asleep during naps, but I know that the time went by and I don't feel like it was a normal amount of time. So like it goes by fast like sleep does. So like it feels like I was sleeping, but I wasn't really sleeping because I know that I was fully aware of everything that was going on the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't nap. I like if I like can actually sleep in the afternoon, it is like I have to be like so tired, like
Yeah.
this week we had our conference that we went to and then
Mhm.
and then I just had a full packed day. We got up at like early, went to, the ski hill and took our kids skiing, and I napped in the car. But like, it was that, like, I'm kind of awake, aware of what's going on around me. But like, that's a rarity to be able to just like find myself asleep doing
Mhm.
nothing else. But I walk in my sleep. And my brother
Oh,
always tells this really funny story of when I was in grad school and he was living with me in Iowa. I don't know. I was having a dream that I needed to plug my phone in. I vaguely remember that part. And I left my bedroom. I grabbed my phone from my bedroom and then tried to plug it in out on in the living room. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I literally walk out there and I'm like messing with my phone. And then I like set it down and then I go back into the other room. Yep. Thought I was plugging in my phone.
that's so
I
funny.
remember waking up as a kid. I remember waking up in weird places. Like I woke up with my blanket in the bathroom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Weird, right?
Yeah.
Something that was supposed to be working in my brain was not working. you
Yeah.
know?
The deep sleep.
Mhm. So, and then I've been told that I'm not very nice in my sleep. So if you try to like get me to go, if I like fall asleep on the couch and you try to get me to go to the bedroom, go to bed or whatever, like, yeah, don't do that. I'm not apparently very nice. I don't know what I said, but it's not great.
That's really funny. I am difficult to move. Like once I go to sleep, nobody's getting me to move. Like my kids will try to wake me up. Like last night, I fell asleep on the couch.
Yeah.
And I know that they turned off the TV because I was watching something on TV. And when I woke up, there was no TV. The TV was not on. And normally it'll just keep playing and playing forever. Like it won't just like stop. And so I know they turned off the TV. My dogs were still like with me on the couch. Like I didn't put anybody to bed. Like I just completely fell asleep. And they probably tell me, "Hey, get up and go upstairs. Like you're asleep now. Like it's time for bed." And I'm just like, "Okay." And then I don't. Like I'll say I will. I'll be like, "Yeah, okay." And then I just completely ignore them and go back to sleep.
Yeah. That's too funny. Um, do you think that your sleep has changed because your kids are all older, a lot more self-sufficient? Like, I feel like I was a very deep sleeper before. Now that I have kids and they're young, I hear every noise, and it's so annoying that my husband never hears when the kids wake up in the middle of the night. Okay, not never, but like most of the time I feel like I always wake up and I hear all the noises. But I wasn't always like that.
I think my sleep has changed from the perspective that I'm not as exhausted. So like I used to be so tired that I would fall asleep and stay asleep and wake up like late. Like I couldn't even wake up in the morning. Like I was so exhausted all the time that I just couldn't function and could barely even wake up like to get to work on time. So I'm not like that anymore. So now I can wake up in the morning and feed my dogs and like I'm not really mad about it. Like I used to be so furious when my alarm would go off because I'm like, no, I'm not ready. Like I need more sleep.
Mhm.
And I'm not like that anymore. Like it's a lot easier for me now to wake up in the morning without being cranky.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I bet that feels a lot better.
It does feel better.
And it's a hope for people out there that aren't morning people, that like maybe there's a chance that you can kind of become less of, you can have more of that morning spirit and stuff. But
Mhm.
I think, we were, talking to a colleague this week, and we were talking about like sleep and insomnia, and like she introduced the idea of like the sleep doctor and things about that, telling us that like maybe that there's just a difference. Like some of us just have different natural circadian rhythms for sleep. And maybe we don't all have to be the same, even though most of us are morning people. Like 50, said like 55% of people are morning people, and they can get up and they feel the best, in those morning hours, getting things done, between like 10 and 2 or something, and feeling pretty good. Some of us are just not morning people, and naturally, we that probably doesn't change a whole lot in our lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, I used to like wish I was asleep when I was awake, like all the time. I'm like, I just would like focus. Sleep was like a huge focus for me all the time. Like I would be thinking about sleep. So if I would wake up in the morning and have to be awake and doing something, all I would be thinking is like, I wish I could be sleeping right now. And so like I'm not like preoccupied by my sleep anymore, even though my sleep is not as restful, I don't think. Like I don't think that I'm getting as deep of sleep as I used to when I was like super duper tired all the time, because now I'm like waking up at night where I never did that before. But it doesn't like it's not as intrusive like in my life, like just like wishing I could go to bed earlier or like needing more sleep before work or something like that.
Well, and that's something that I find is really common in as we get older. I don't want to say that, but like as our hormones change and our life
Right.
changes, sometimes that is a very common thing, especially like 10 years before that menopausal time period. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times women are starting to see those progesterone levels go down. And so sometimes it can be a hormone imbalance that could be creating some of those sleep problems. I hear a lot of like increased anxiety or like problems staying asleep at night being probably one of the most common things. So, there's definitely hormone issues that can happen. The other thing that like I always screen patients on is, when they're saying that they have problems sleeping or they feel really tired during the day, there are sleep disorders that aren't talked about very often. So, there is a percentage of people that can have narcolepsy without cataplexy. And when I talk about this to clients, they're like, what? I'm not just like falling asleep at my desk or in my food or whatever, But the fact is that you don't have to have that like falling asleep thing. It's that like you're just extremely tired during the day and could sleep during the daytime. If you're sitting back watching a show or like relaxing for a few minutes, then you could be out, and you're oftentimes seeing that they're going into that REM sleep very quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
they fall asleep and dream really quickly, as one of the things. Also looking at like restless leg and different disorders where we're often like feeling like our legs are really restless and kicking a lot could be another contributing factor to people who think that they're sleeping through the night, but also, or it could wake them up, but they're maybe sleeping through the night, but they're not getting that quality sleep because of these like restless leg movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like, what are some of the other, we kind of mentioned, like, most people are morning people, right? Like, what are some of the other groups of sleepers? Like, how does that look for other people?
Well, I think some people are night people, right? They're going to, feel the most energy in the evening time.
Mm-hmm.
There's just different like circadian rhythms for different people. Some people might get a burst of energy, they might have a little bit in the afternoon and then they're feeling really like energetic towards the evening time. So different people will have different like circadian rhythms for their body, just like even with nutrition, right? Like some people don't feel hungry in the morning. Well, that has to do with like the chrononutrition, our like clock in our body telling us when we're hungry, when we're not hungry. And some of that we have to start trying to build on. Like the more we don't do something, right? Like with eating, if we don't eat breakfast, then we're never going to be a breakfast person.
Mm-hmm.
But if we start eating breakfast, we could become a breakfast person. And I think that the same is probably true to some degree with sleep. Obviously, like some sleep training works in some people. We're not going to automatically be morning people, but we can try to get into a better rhythm. And we do that by doing good sleep hygiene practices. Maybe we really are a person that has good could have normal circadian rhythm, but we wouldn't know unless we tried.
Mm-hmm.
So we get stuck into these patterns of, sleeping in the morning when we can, and then, going to bed late when we can. And we kind of have a schedule that's all over the place. And so we wouldn't know if it's really just a circadian rhythm, like that's just our jam versus it being poor sleep habits. And so I think the first thing that we would want to do is make sure that we're following these good sleep habits so that we can see if we can be the most successful possible. Right. And so I know we talked about daytime activities like avoiding a lot of caffeine late in the day. Some people it's 2 p.m., some people it's noon, some people it's earlier. The older that we get, the less we can metabolize caffeine. And so more caffeine is going to hang around longer in our system. So people will be like, I've been drinking 8 cups of coffee my whole life. What do you mean I have to stop drinking coffee? Right? And it's like, well, your body could metabolize it before, and now it's having a hard time metabolizing it. So we can't be drinking coffee all day. And I think even for people that are like, oh, I fall asleep so easily with coffee, like coffee makes me fall asleep. And it's like, okay, that's fine. It might make you fall asleep, but what else is the coffee and the caffeine doing to your nervous system? It's probably increasing cortisol. Like it's doing other things, and it's probably going to lead to you having problems with sleeping through the night as well. So sometimes that's a problem. Like we talked about working out, napping. Some people are nappers and they can nap and they can have a full night's sleep, and that's great. But when we start seeing that nap intruding on our nighttime sleep, then it's maybe time to reevaluate the nap. And that may not happen right away, but over time it could be happening. And so then you can say, well, I've been napping for, forever. And now, well, maybe now it is impacting your sleep at night because we need less sleep as we age, maybe. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rules of napping are going to be like no more than 90 minutes and no more than like 5 hours. You need to be up at least for 5 hours after the nap before you're like wanting to go to bed. And so that's going to help protect that nighttime sleep. I mean, you think about babies, right? We always made sure that they're not napping too close to bedtime, or otherwise our bedtime is going to be thrown off. And so they're just little humans similar to us. So we need to, follow the rules too. And then protecting your bedtime routine is huge. So I know that like this is my least popular conversation that I have with people. People really don't want to listen. People think like the TV makes me fall asleep. The TV helps me fall asleep, which I don't discount. I think that that's true. It's a distraction of your brain, right? And it's a very successful distraction. And so, turning on Friends for the 18th, 100th time, you've seen all the episodes, you know that it's going to put you to sleep. But you're not also taking into consideration your brain. Brains want to finish things. Brains want to know what's going on. And so even if you're asleep, are you really in that deep sleep because your mind is hearing what's going on in the background? If you're watching something that you've never seen before, it's exciting. You can get that adrenaline rush, and you can literally, if you pay attention to your body and if you can feel like your heart is a little bit faster than what it would normally be before bedtime. And you can feel the difference when you go a long time without watching shows at nighttime. And then you can feel the difference in your body and how it reacts to at bedtime when you're trying to put your brain down for the day. It's really crazy. So, turning the TV off. And I forgot to mention that like the light from the TV is also catastrophic for sleep. That light is going to be decreasing that natural production of melatonin because, that's how our brains were designed to see, oh, it's nighttime, right? It's time to start shutting down. It's time to go to sleep. And so having all the lights in the house on bright and watching TV and being on your phone, scrolling, those are all going to make really big impacts on your sleep. And so if you want to have the best sleep possible, you do really want to make sure that an hour before bed, you're kind of shutting all those things down. You're turning the lights down, you're dimming them so that you can kind of like let your brain start recognizing it's time for sleep.
Yeah. Those are all really good. And they make perfect sense. You know what I mean? Like when you're saying this stuff, it's like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I feel really called out about the caffeine. I'm just saying, because I know we just spent 2 days together and you watched me drink like 700 Diet Cokes a day. And I will drink them right before bed. And I think it's fine because I can fall asleep. But like, as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's why I can't stay asleep. Maybe that's why I'm waking up all the time, like for no reason. And because I don't feel necessarily anxious, I just feel like I'm not resting. You know what I mean? And I think, sometimes there's other things that can contribute to not being able to sleep, like depression, anxiety, and other like mood disorders and difficulties with your mental health, like a high level of stress, like all of those things can make it really hard for you to fall asleep or stay asleep. And it's really important to take care of your mental health. And part of that is like taking care of your nutrition, right? Like, I feel like often we try to isolate these things and we say like, oh, well, it's just this one thing. Like it's this one area of my life, but it's not. It's you're a whole person and you have a lot of variables that are impacting how things are going for you. And so nutrition is a really important component of sleep too. Like there's
Yeah.
foods that you can eat that cause or that there's foods that you can eat that actually like create more calming effects than other foods. And there's foods that you can eat that create like energizing effects as well, right? Like if you're eating a lot of sugary foods or carbohydrates like close to bedtime, you know, you might get that like coma, like the pasta kind of coma or whatever, but that's not sustained sleepiness. That's just like I'm digesting really hard food, really food that's hard to digest and that takes a lot of energy, but it's going to turn into energy once it's digested. Like so now I'm going to end up with more energy at the end.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love that you brought that up. I think that that's so on point. And it made me think about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So often do people say like, oh yeah, I drink my glass of wine and then I don't have any problems falling asleep. But then they're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning when that alcohol is being, digested and it's not making you have the sleepy effects, and you're having even actually like maybe higher sugar or lower sugar depending on the timing of things, and how your what medicines you're taking and whatnot. But like we wake up so thirsty in the middle of the night after having
Mm-hmm.
a drink to put us to sleep, and then now we're awake and now we're not tired to go back to sleep again. So
Mm-hmm.
alcohol can be a really big component of like waking up in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, with alcohol too, like you wake up just not feeling as clear headed. So like the morning is harder if you're somebody who's not a morning person already, and then you're waking up after a night of having a couple of drinks before going to bed, then like you're going to wake up, your brain's going to be foggy. You're not going to be clear. You're not going to be feeling refreshed because you had, like that crash and then the sugar rush and then you know what I mean? Like all of these different disruptors that have happened throughout the night, you're not going to feel refreshed in the morning. You're not going to feel like spry first thing when your alarm goes off, ready to go. You're going to hit it. You're going to be hitting snooze, at least 27 times before you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other, we talked a lot about like nighttime things that you can do. And so, but like morning time,
Mm-hmm.
starting your day at the same time of day consistently is also another factor that can contribute to having better sleep at night, because your body is following a rhythm, right? And knows what to expect. And so if we're waking up at the same time of day, we're more likely to be tired at the same time of day. But if we're like, sleeping in like a teenager, I mean, I liked my sleep a lot when I was a teenager. I tell you, no judgment here, but like,
Oh yeah.
we're sleeping in, we're getting our day started later, we're having our caffeine later, we're doing all these things later in the day. And so then we're having a harder time getting to bed that night. And then we just, kind of never get back on track. There was also another study that said it's better to go to bed at the same time of night every night versus like variable times. Like you think you're doing yourself a good favor. You're like, oh, I went to bed at 9 o'clock last night. I got a solid, not 10 hours of sleep. I'm great. Like you think that you're really doing your body, the service, you're catching up on things, but they show that it's actually better for you to go to bed, even if it's just a little bit later, but to be more consistent with that sleep. Again, supporting that body's natural clock of finding a rhythm of sleep, and then just being consistent with that. I think someone was saying that like 7 hours is probably like the sweet spot for sleep. Like you can get too much sleep. And so like some people feel like a little bit more tired if they get, 8.5 hours of sleep, where they feel the best when they get 8 hours of sleep. And so finding that like magic, time for your own body and then setting your clock around that can be helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like having just the rhythm so that your body can get used to it. Similarly to sleep, like you're training your brain. You're training your brain to get used to something that happens at the same time every day. And it's like, well, wires together, fires together. We say all the time. We heard that 1,000 times over the past couple of days.
Yeah.
But we're training our brain to know that, like, oh, it's around this time. I'm going to start getting tired. I'm going to start producing that melatonin. I'm going to start looking for, winding down opportunities. And so we're ready to give our body a break at that time. And that's really important to your body's ability to calm down. It needs to have a routine. It needs to know what to expect, because otherwise, if it's expecting things to just be chaotic and anything goes anytime, it's not going to know what to do. It's not going to be able to get into that mode as easily. Some things that I recommend to people who have a hard time relaxing is to take breaks throughout the day and calm yourself down, even if you don't think you're not calm. Like you might think you're fine, but you need to take a break, just a random time throughout the day, like 3 or 4 times, and just intentionally calm yourself down. Because what you're teaching yourself how to do is calm down in any moment. And then when you need it, you'll be able to use it,
Yeah.
because you don't want that to be a game time decision. You don't want your body to have to practice when it's time to fall asleep. You want to set yourself up for success by having a routine where your body can predict what's going to happen next. And
Yeah.
then when you calm yourself down throughout the day, you're giving yourself that blueprint, like, oh, now I know how to do this, so I can do it when I need it.
Yeah. It's like muscle memory.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that that's a really good point. Um, I was also thinking about like, we kind of alluded to like having a lot of cognitive distortions or like mental mistakes surrounding the thoughts about bad sleep. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that this is one of the cornerstone things in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, but it's like helping like cognitive restructuring around those thoughts and those beliefs around sleep. So like I might think tomorrow is going to be terrible, but is it really ever as bad as I think it's going to be?
Mm-hmm.
No. Right. And so we start to, I always tell people it's like Pavlov's dogs, right? So we have all this tossing and turning that happens in our bed, and it's kind of that classic conditioning, thing that's going on. It's like we are feeding the dogs and we ring the bell. Now the bell signifies food for the dog. Now,
Mm-hmm.
just even thinking about bed means I'm going to not sleep good. I'm
Mm-hmm.
worried that I'm going to toss and turn. What happens tomorrow? And I'm not saying that like people who have had severe insomnia days and days on end don't feel like the worst. It is terrible. And I'm not discounting that part of it. I'm talking more about like the everyday person that has these like, these has had bad sleep and has, kind of got stuck in this pattern. So
Mm-hmm.
like what would you suggest someone do, or like ways that they can help walk themselves through how to improve some of those negative thoughts?
I mean, I think to challenge those thoughts is important. Creating like a visualization, maybe, of like what you want to feel like the next day, or creating a relaxing visualization, even listening to some sleep music can help those thoughts just like fade away a little bit. Like, I listen to sleep music sometimes on my phone before bed, and it helps me like calm my brain. It tells my brain, oh, it's time to be calm, because the calm music is coming on. And so when I hear my calm music, my brain is like, oh, fire, that is wired with this. I'm going to fire at the same time to start going to sleep. And it also, focusing on the calm music that doesn't have any words or anything like that, just focusing on the melody helps my brain not focus on the thoughts. So there's like one, just it's a distraction. It's a way to focus on something else, focus my attention on something helpful instead of something that's not as helpful. And those thoughts aren't helping me right now. So the other thing is to challenge the negative thoughts, like just kind of let them know that there's other possibilities, right? Like tomorrow doesn't have to be terrible. Like, okay, maybe last night was really hard, but tonight doesn't have to be. Just because it happened before doesn't mean it's going to happen again. So reminding myself that anything can happen now and that every night is a new opportunity to get better sleep and have a better time. And so I think that using some of those strategies could help retrain your brain to be less like dread less, right? Like it's that feeling of dread, what you were describing. It's like this, I'm dreading laying down because I know it's just going to be hard. But changing your environment is going to show yourself that there's something different about this. It doesn't have to be the same. So maybe get a fresh set of sheets, maybe make a change to the layout of your room, or hang some nice calming pictures, like things that you like change the color scheme, make a change in your environment that can also like give yourself an opportunity to reset. So like, because what wires together fires together, you're taking out all the things that remind you, like you're basically getting a new bell instead of the old bell. You're getting a new bell and you're retraining your brain to do something different.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's a great plan. So we've talked about like different ways to set the intention for sleep. We've talked about things that we can get rid of, things that we can add in. Is there anything else that you can think of that might help with like the overall sleep health of somebody?
The thing that you mentioned before about exercise, like not exercising too close to bedtime, but exercising at some point throughout your day. Like being active is one thing that I always recommend too. Like going for a 20-minute walk every day is so helpful for your brain and your body. And it gives yourself like, it gives your brain time to focus on different things. Like don't bring your phone, don't be checking it. Just if you are listening to music, that's fine. But try to go for a 20-minute walk where you're not, engaging with your device. And so you're giving yourself time to recognize like what calm looks like. A lot of the time, I think it's that we just don't know what calm looks like. We don't know how that feels in our bodies. We don't know. And those activities that you can do, like if you're exercising a little bit, like it releases a lot of important neurochemicals that allow your body to optimally perform. And some of those is like serotonin, and some of that is the ability to rest afterward, right? Like, so when you've got this workout going or when you're walking, you're exerting energy, but your body has to like constantly regulate in that moment. So it's practicing. You're building muscles, but you're also building like your internal muscle to come back down from getting worked up. Like, I think it's just a really important exercise for your mind as well.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, when I run, I process through all the things that I'd probably be like thinking about at nighttime. So like I'm giving myself and like just even giving yourself an opportunity during the day to like think about things or like have space for that might take it away at nighttime. The other thing I was thinking about is like fight or flight. So, a lot of the things come back to the sympathetic nervous system arousal. And what happens? I don't know if anybody has like an Aura ring or like something that tracks their sleep at nighttime, whatever. When you don't get good sleep at nighttime, what happens? Your sympathetic nervous system arousal is generally higher. And so by just getting less sleep, you're setting yourself up to almost have your amygdala smoke detector be more sensitive, I think. I wonder, And
yeah, I think that's true. I think because it lessens your window of tolerance, right? Like it closes that window a little bit because your body's having to work on less resources. So you don't have the resources you need in order to maintain a level of calm and settled and safe throughout the day.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And, even calls into, who hasn't had like a bad night's sleep or like just didn't have opportunity to, things were so busy, whatever. And then the next day they're pretty grumpy, like they're short with we just don't feel like ourselves. And so I think that like what you're talking about like taking breaks during the day and making sure that we're like having opportunity to calm our nervous system is definitely going to be helpful at decreasing and improving our window of tolerance and lowering that threshold where we feel like we can be operating at like a better, closer to our baseline.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So we have our sleep environment that we can change. We have our sleep schedule, like our routine, nighttime routine that we can change. We can change the sights and sounds that we have before bed. We can change our mental mindset about bedtime and what that looks like. We can use strategies for our nutrition and for our health that are outside of sleep stuff, like what we don't already think about, like alcohol consumption, caffeine consumption. There's so many things that we can do to improve our sleep. So I think we start with those and then kind of see where it goes from there.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree. A couple of things that I was thinking that we could add to that list is the optimal sleep temperature is probably, I think it's 67 degrees. So having it cooler in the house actually promotes better sleep at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what are you sleeping on? Who hasn't slept on a crappy mattress or a couch because you were staying over somewhere? And of course, like or just because you fell asleep on the couch, right?
Right.
That environment is probably going to be more conducive for waking up with hip pain or like headaches or neck aches and things like that. And that's going to definitely not make us feel better. So being mindful of like, is it time to upgrade your mattress and like making sure that we have a budget that's saving towards ensuring that we can have the best place to sleep. I know mattresses are super expensive, but they're definitely worth it if you can, and then, just making sure your temperature is down lower, which can be really hard. In my house, I know that the kids' bed, like one of the kids' bedrooms is more likely to be cooler or warmer or whatever. And so it's hard to adjust the temperature. So everybody has the best, sleep possible. So I know that it's not always easy to do, but you can do the best that you can to make sure that it's the best environment.
Yeah. And it's so worth it to take some of these steps, even if you only take a couple of them, like take some of these small steps to improve the quality of your life overall.
Yeah. I was going to say too, there are some supplements that can help promote better sleep. And so, that's something that we would talk about like in a consultation to help you understand a little bit more about what options might be the best for you, particularly. But like magnesium's always one of the ones that I throw out there. I've found success like with treating restless leg, improving anything like that. Cramps, can improve with magnesium. You don't have to, always ingest it either. You can do like an Epsom salt bath type thing that magnesium salts can soak into the skin so that it doesn't have as much havoc on like your GI tract and things like that. So there's definitely like supplements, but like the one thing that I want you to know about sleep is that it is not a quick fix. When it has taken us years to create bad habits around sleep. And I know that it's like one of the most frustrating things that we want to just like fix, right? Like right now. And there's medicines that we can use and things that we can use to help you get better sleep immediately. But ultimately, if the research shows the best long-lasting results for sleep is going to be using the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, for like good sleep hygiene, doing these things, it has the longest lasting effects.
Yeah.
So it's not
a fast, easy fix, but it's worth the time and energy and effort to take some steps that you can take right away, small steps even, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was very enlightening, and I think I'm going to take some steps to improve my sleep hygiene. I've learned a little bit. I'm going to maybe switch to decaf. We'll see what happens. But I really appreciate you in this conversation, and thank you for listening to Why Am I Like This? If you're like our show, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Follow the show and share it with your friends. This episode was written and produced by me, Laura Wood, and Michela Beaver. Our theme song is Making Ends Meet by Thick as Thieves. And a special thanks to Benaviri Counseling and Active Healing Psychiatric Services for sponsoring our show.